So good to see you. And we've got a lot to talk about. But before we do, introduce yourself, because there's lots of news to say, and you've had a very interesting career and some latest updates as well with a new title and things like that. So give us a brief introduction and story.
Cool. I will do. I will keep it brief because, and also I did throw such a curveball at you. You invited me to do this when I had my old title, and then very recently things have changed. I'm Becca. I am the head of creative capabilities on Lions Advisory. So I guess to walk anyone through it who might be familiar with Cannes Lions, that's where the Lions part comes from. I used to work for a company called Contagious, which Mike just mentioned. Contagious is a marketing intelligence company. We were acquired by the Lions organization 2 years ago now. And so we are sister companies with Cannes Lions, but also WARC, the World Advertising Research Center, and most recently Effie's. And so what we decided we would do is that whilst those all exist as separate intelligence platforms, our advisory teams decided to merge together to become this kind of big super advisory team to help anyone who was kind of wanting to go through their own creative transformation, to tap into creativity as a competitive edge for themselves moving forward. And that is what my team helps businesses do.
Wow. That's super powerful. Well, look, let's get straight into it then, because, like I said, I've got such a personal relationship with Contagious because, it led me to set up my last agency. I found it really inspiring with the way that it's integrated events and just the content that it does. But you have, got some fantastic insight. And so what are you seeing, especially in this madly changing world, which just doesn't seem to be slowing down? Are the gaps between kind of what brands think is working and what actually is? We've just obviously had System 1 in here and stuff like that. So, and Zoom, and talking about that adaptable world. So what's your personal perspective on it all?
I think it's a great question. It's such a big question, and there are so many places you could take it. I'm sure the System 1 team, Vanessa and myself, have crossed paths many times and have some similar perspectives here and there. I think for me, there may be three things recently that feel like they're most top of mind. I think when it comes to the differences between what brands think and what is working and what is actually working, there's obviously the debate around performance marketing versus brand building marketing. I think it's a topic that has been kind of discussed ad nauseum, but if anyone is actually looking for the latest thinking on the interrelationship between those things rather than the divisive conversation that can often arise, WARC has come out with this incredible piece of research called the multiplier effect. The clue is kind of in the title, but it's really worth a read. The second thing is, for me, in terms of what brands think is working versus what is actually working. It's not necessarily something that we think is working that isn't, but I think at the moment, the way that we think about media selection is really interesting and potentially slightly outdated. There's some really fascinating research happening around attention science by the likes of Karen Nelson-Field, who's been doing this for a long time. She's absolutely brilliant. And one of the things that she is really on top of is this sense that at the moment, the way that we measure reach, which I think is particularly interesting for events as much as it is for marketing, is kind of flat, whereas we should be layering on attention economics onto that. And so she has lots of really interesting guidance that she's developing that will help with kind of media selection choices, creative development choices, so that we're taking into account how people today actually consume media and how we're trained to pay attention to things on different platforms, which I think is fascinating. And I said there's three. My one last one that I am going to mention, I'm sorry, I'm already throwing so much at you, Mike.
That's great.
This is what happens when you have a chat with me.
No, I love it. That's what
the last thing I think is probably the thing that you would most expect someone like me who has worked at Contagious to say. And I think the thing that people can often think is working that isn't is that kind of enduring belief that it is okay to do safe, average marketing because somehow it'll get the job done. And I think it is so much more nuanced than that. I spend my day trying to help people understand the evidence that proves that that isn't right, that it will cost you an incredible amount of money to try and get results with average work, but also the results you're going to get are going to be minimal compared to what they could be had you taken a more creative route?
True. To be honest, I think like not to put, but that's exactly why we've created Audience 101 was, we're trying to bring diverse industries, diverse departments so people can start looking left and right far more because that's where the real knowledge and inspiration comes from. And interestingly, I did a podcast with Beth Gordon, who's now at The Independent in the UK, but she was in Spotify right at the start, and she came up with a great one that, I think this was quite Virgin approach as well, was Spotify always don't look at your competitors because we don't want to be like them. We are an individual business and an individual brand. We don't want to be a Me Too. So we haven't got a competitor. And I thought that was such a great line to just kind of consider and stuff like that. So what are the patterns that you're seeing? How do you get people to change their mindsets?
Mm. I love what you just said. I love that Spotify story. I'm 100% going to steal that. And I think the pattern of the brands that are succeeding, the ones that are, like you say, like forging a new path, are the brands who know very clearly what they're trying to achieve. And they're not overly prescriptive on how they're going to do that. They're not saying, well, what has everyone else done before us? And therefore, let's incorporate that. They're not necessarily focused on incremental improvements. They're genuinely thinking quite heretically about what do we need to do differently? What if we did X instead of Y? And because they know what it is they're trying to achieve, they're able to do that. I feel like that's what you guys did with this festival. I think the fact that you were saying, what, we know the world has changed. We could look at doing events online in the same way that we used to do events in person, but actually let's reimagine that. And I think that reimagination, because you know what you're setting out to achieve, is the thing that helps brands innovate and be the most creative that they can be.
Thank you. I like that. And what brands do you think are getting it right out there then? And how?
So I inevitably will come at this from sort of a creative communication standpoint. But I think the brands out there that are getting it right, you have, I think, your usual suspects. I think you have the likes of the Doves of the world, Pines, the IKEA, the Pedigrees. If you're British, maybe the Channel 4s of the world. I have a soft spot in my heart. Because they're just doing such a strong job at consistently and creatively meeting their audiences where they are. I think that if anyone wants like a slightly left field suggestion on brands that are smashing it at the moment, I think ASICS, the sportswear company, has been doing phenomenal stuff, and very subtly. Like, I think the way that they've approached it, that personality, the way that comes through has been genius. I think Knorr, the bouillon company, again, not a company you would expect to be hugely creative, hugely exciting. It's really hard to create conversation around bouillon, and yet they have done it time and time again. And I think that's really smart. And Specsavers is the brand as well that I would point people towards, because over the past 2 decades, they have been genius. They've been so smart, so just tight and simple and clear about what they're trying to communicate. And they've been expanding out what their business is, moving into kind of I don't know what you call it, but hearing rather than just vision. And the way that they've managed to extend the platform that they had is really, really smart. So I think the pattern across all of those things, whether they're the oldies but goodies or the slightly newer, less expected ones, is creative consistency. So I think being able to manage what is timeless and what is timely, what is familiar and what is fresh, I think having an understanding of those two components and how you combine them at different points in time for different objectives, that is what leads to success.
There was a lot in that answer, because but well, no, that's great though, because the thing is it makes me think that people need to understand the need for proper strategy planning, but integrating adaptability and not being reactive within it. I think is what I kind of get out of that statement. And it's, it's interesting. So look, I've got to start wrapping up. So we're coming to the end, and I want to get a quick fire round. So I'm going to try and condense the next 2 questions into one. But the best from my point of view, it's great when you see these bigger startup mentality brands, the ones that can be agile. But the challenge is once you start getting bigger. But it's interesting. You've talked about bigger organizations that have been around for a while really understanding it. And with Contagious being in the middle of that within departments, what does an effective strategy process really look like inside a high performing team? Because that's the biggest challenge, isn't it? We talked with Kathy about breaking down silos. Vanessa talked about it as well, but you guys are in those teams doing that. So how do you instigate that? How does that happen? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I will try and keep my answer concise. I think the way that we approach it with businesses is to help them make sure that they have the internal alignment that is necessary to be able to have buy-in from the right people. We help them build and design then either the tools or the frameworks or the forums that will help make that become muscle memory within the organization. But the thing I would say that really sets apart the businesses that we work with who are able to execute really excellent strategy are the ones that are really choiceful. So knowing that they're going to need to make sacrifices, that they're going to need to ruthlessly prioritize, those are the ones that I think do well. And not only do they do that, but going back to that alignment piece, they have truly empowered teams who have the authority, they have the accountability as well to go away and make that thing happen. And they have agility, they have flexibility in the how, but the what and the why, there is no question on. So those are the ones that I think managed to nail it.
Brilliant. And really interesting. That's kind of why I had Joanna on earlier, because the coaching, and I know Contagious use her, don't they? So, getting that kind of coaching to enable teams to learn what it means to kind of adapt and change and be functional within this kind of modern world. So let's get into the quick fire round, wrap this session up. Keen to hear your views on this. So culture, book, artist or film? Come on, what shaped how you work?
I read this book last year and it has stuck with me. So Will Widara wrote a book called Unreasonable Hospitality, and it has changed the way I look at things. And I absolutely love it. The main thing, if anyone needs motivation to go read it, is I think it speaks volumes to the collaboration that is required to do things that have never been done before. I think it's incredible and a really easy, amazing read.
It really, like so many, it's a fantastic thing, and it's linked to The Bear, isn't it? And actually, Joanna kind of referenced it. It's a great book. Brand, come on, going to be really hard for you given how many you work with and how many things you've seen. But what's the brand that's really nailing it, you think, right now?
I've said them way too many times on this call, but I'm going to stick with Heinz. I think they're doing a phenomenal job.
They are. It's really good, and anybody listening, you should really check out some of the coverage that, some of the talks actually that the Heinz have done at some of the Contagious events, because it really is inspiring and very creative. Health, well, not just moved to New York, but you're living in New York now. You've just gone through a big, merger and change. How are you staying healthy, or are you?
I'm doing my best, Mike. Yes, I would say so. I love that Kathy said tennis because I recently picked up tennis. Honestly, my thing is I take breaks. I need time when I'm not actively thinking about work. And so, yeah, breaks is the way for me.
Breaks and tennis. Hey, I'm going to have to get a tennis brand in, I think, next time then. And then connection, most valuable collaboration, partnership.
I'm going to do a bit of a cop out, Mike. I'm so sorry. I cannot pick just once. I'm going to say like my entire team and my clients are the ongoing most valuable creative and strategic partnerships and connections that I have, because I think we all push each other to see things differently. So that's my cop out answer.
That's a good one. I'm going to take it. You're a little bit given, especially the company we work in and the brands that you work with. So, look, it's so great to reconnect. I'm really pleased. I love it when I get together with you guys because it's all so inspiring. Really excited to see how all of this new role evolves. Sounds super, super fun. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, and look forward to reconnecting soon.
Definitely.